"You want me to what?" Michael Preston's voice cut through the mahogany-lined boardroom, drawing concerned glances from the other executives present. Marcus Chen, the youngest board member, leaned forward with a predatory smile. "Get married, Michael. Or at least appear to be. The Takeda Group is traditional. They won't close a deal this size with someone they view as unstable." Michael's fingers tightened around his Mont Blanc pen. The merger documents lay scattered across the table, representing 18 months of work and a potential $2.8 billion deal. His personal life had never been relevant before, and now it was threatening to derail everything. "This is absurd," he said, standing up. "My personal status has nothing to do with my ability to—" "Sit down, Michael." Barbara Chen, the board chair, spoke quietly, but with unmistakable authority. "This isn't just about Takeda. Our major clients are expressing concern about continuity. You're brilliant at what you do, but you're also seen as a flight risk. No family ties, no community involvement. In today's market, that makes people nervous." The room fell silent. Michael could feel the weight of 8 pairs of eyes on him. He'd built Preston Consulting from the ground up, transformed it from a one-man operation to a global player. Now they wanted him to manufacture a personal life to appease conservative clients. "The vote is already in," Marcus added, sliding a folder across the table. "Either you present a more traditional image within the next 2 weeks, or we'll be forced to reconsider your position as CEO during the merger negotiations." Michael's jaw clenched. "You can't be serious." "We're not asking for a miracle," Barbara interjected, her tone softening. "Just show them you're capable of maintaining a stable relationship. Bring a wife to the Takeda events next week. After that, things can evolve naturally." "A wife?" Michael's laugh was hollow. "You want me to find a wife in 7 days?" "Not find," Marcus corrected, his smile widening. "Hire. We've prepared a list of suitable candidates, professional women who understand corporate discretion. Think of it as a short-term consulting contract." Michael stood again, this time slowly. The proposal was insane, yet he could see the cold logic behind it. The Takeda merger would secure Preston Consulting's position in the Asian market for the next decade. Without it, they'd lose ground to competitors who were already circling. "And if I refuse," Barbara sighed, "then we'll have to move forward with Marcus as lead negotiator. He has an impeccable family image after all." The implied threat wasn't subtle. Marcus had been gunning for Michael's position for years, and this was the perfect opportunity to force a transition of power. "1 week," Michael said finally, his voice tight. "And after the Takeda meetings?" "That's up to you," Barbara replied. "But remember, stability is about more than just one deal." Michael gathered his papers, his movements deliberate. As he reached the door, Marcus called out, "Oh, and Michael, make it convincing. Our shareholders are counting on you." The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt like a prison gate shutting. In his 20-year career, Michael had navigated hostile takeovers, market crashes, and corporate espionage. But this was different. They weren't just asking him to play a role, they were demanding he create an entire fictional life. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. "List of candidates in your inbox. First interview scheduled for 2 p.m. Michael stared at the screen, a plan already forming. If they wanted him to hire a wife, he'd make sure it was on his terms. Someone professional enough to understand the stakes, intelligent enough to hold their own in corporate circles, and pragmatic enough to walk away when it was over. He opened the email, scanning the attached profiles. The board might think they were backing him into a corner, but they'd forgotten one crucial detail. Nobody understood contracts better than Michael Preston, and this would be the most important contract he'd ever negotiate. Elena Suarez arrived at Preston Consulting exactly 10 minutes early, her portfolio tucked under her arm. The elevator ride to the 47th floor gave her time to question her sanity one final time. The recruitment call had been peculiar, vague about the position, but insistent about the compensation. 5 times her current consulting rate for 1 week of work. The elevator doors opened to reveal a minimalist reception area where a perfectly groomed assistant waited. "Ms. Suarez, Mr. Preston will see you now." She was led through a maze of glass-walled offices to a corner suite with sweeping views of the city. Michael Preston stood at the window, his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear. "Just handle it," he said sharply, ending the call. He turned, and Elena found herself under the scrutiny of striking grey eyes. "Ms. Suarez," he gestured to a chair, "thank you for coming on such short notice. Your offer was compelling." She took the seat, noting how he remained standing. Power play. Basic negotiation tactic. "Let's not waste time," he said. "I need a wife for 7 days." Eleanor's carefully prepared response died in her throat. "Excuse me?" "A temporary wife. Professional arrangement. No romantic involvement. No physical contact. Purely business." He finally sat down, sliding a contract across the desk. "The role requires attending several high-level corporate events, convincingly presenting as my spouse, and maintaining absolute discretion." Eleanor stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When none came, she reached for the contract. "This is either a joke or illegal." "Neither. Check page 4, section 12. Everything's structured as a standard consulting agreement. You'd be advising on corporate culture and client relations, with additional compensation for social events outside business hours." She skimmed the document. The language was precise, the terms clear. "Why me?" "Your background: Masters in Business Administration, specialty in cross-cultural corporate relations, 5 years consulting experience, no current romantic entanglements that might complicate things." He paused. "And you're not afraid to challenge authority figures. You've done your homework." "I never enter negotiations unprepared." Elena leaned back, studying him. His reputation preceded him. Brilliant but cold, demanding but fair. The business press called him the architect for his ability to structure impossible deals. Why the rush? Merger negotiations. Traditional Japanese firm. They value... His lip curled slightly. Family stability. So this is about appearance. Everything in business is about appearance. He stood again, pacing. "I need someone who understands corporate dynamics, can handle high-pressure situations, and won't get emotionally invested. And after 7 days, clean break, no contact. Your consulting firm gets a lucrative ongoing contract with Preston Consulting, and you get a glowing recommendation for any future position." Elena tapped the contract against the desk, thinking. The proposition was absurd, but the opportunity was undeniable. A week with Preston Consulting's top executives could open doors that would otherwise take years to crack. "I have conditions," she said finally. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Go on." "I maintain my consulting work during business hours. Any story we create about our relationship needs to acknowledge my professional achievements, and I want veto power over any public narrative about our arrangement." Michael studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Acceptable. Anything else?" "Yes." Elena stood, meeting his gaze. "Don't ever try to manage me. I'll play the role convincingly, but I won't be controlled." A flicker of something, respect, maybe, crossed his face. "Deal." He extended his hand. Elena shook it firmly. 1 week. "Starting when?" "Tomorrow. Dinner with the board. Consider it a dress rehearsal." He handed her a folder. "Everything you need to know about our relationship is in here. Study it tonight." As Elena left the office, she could feel his eyes on her back. She'd just agreed to the strangest contract of her career, and something told her the fine print would be the least of her concerns. "Our first date was at Bistro Laurent," Michael said, not looking up from his laptop. "You ordered the coq au vin, I had the duck confit. It was raining." Eleanor paced his office, heels clicking against hardwood. "And we met through James Chen, mutual friend, at a charity gala last year." He glanced up. "The details are in the brief." "Details aren't enough." Eleanor stopped pacing. "We need chemistry, Michael. Natural reactions. The board members at dinner tonight. How long have they known you?" "Most of them. 5 years minimum. Then they know your patterns, your tells. We can't just recite facts." She perched on the edge of his desk, forcing him to look at her. "What makes you laugh?" His fingers stilled on the keyboard. "This isn't a therapy session." "No, it's worse. It's a performance for people who know the real you. If we get this wrong, your board sees through it instantly." Michael closed his laptop with a sharp click. "Fine. What do you suggest?" "First, boundaries. Clear ones." Elena pulled out her phone, opening a new note. "Physical contact. What's acceptable? Whatever's necessary to be convincing. Not good enough. Specific lines, Michael. Hand-holding? Fine. Arm around waist." A pause. "If the situation requires it." "Kiss?" His jaw tightened. "Not unless absolutely unavoidable." Eleanor typed each point. "Pet names?" "God, no. Terms of endearment might be expected. Then keep them minimal, professional." "That's an oxymoron." She smiled slightly. "What about our proposal story?" Michael reached for a file. "Already prepared. Private dinner at—" "No." Eleanor took the file, closing it. "That's not how this works." Good lies build from truth. Tell me something real about yourself and we'll build the story from there. The silence stretched. Finally he spoke. I restore vintage motorcycles. Really? She leaned forward, interested despite herself. My father taught me. Before he... Michael's expression closed off. It's a hobby. Perfect. Elena started typing again. You took me for a ride on your restored Triumph. Sunset at the coast. Spontaneous proposal, because the moment felt right. That's not believable. It is because it's grounded in something real. She showed him the notes. People connect to authenticity, Michael. We need just enough truth to sell the fiction. He studied the screen, frowning. You're good at this. Cultural consulting isn't just about business practices. It's about understanding human dynamics. She stood, smoothing her skirt. Now, what are you wearing tonight? Why? Because we need to look like we belong together. Send me a photo of your suit, I'll coordinate. Michael checked his watch. Dinner's in 4 hours, then I better go shopping. She headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Michael, learn to look at me like you actually want me there. Meaning, right now you look at me like a contract to be negotiated. Try for something warmer. She smiled. Think about your motorcycle. The door closed behind her, leaving Michael staring at the space she'd occupied. After a moment he opened his laptop again, but instead of returning to work, he found himself pulling up photos of his Triumph restoration project. Against his will, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Maybe Elena had a point about authentic moments. His phone buzzed, a message from Barbara. Looking forward to meeting the woman who finally caught you. Michael's smile faded. In 4 hours, they'd have their first test. And somehow he suspected the hardest part wouldn't be remembering the details they'd rehearsed, but navigating the unexpected ones they hadn't. He reached for his phone, typing quickly. Send me the exact shade of your dress. Elena's response came seconds later. Trust me. For some reason, he did. The St. Regis ballroom hummed with the quiet energy of power. CEOs, board members, and key stakeholders mingled over champagne, their laughter a carefully calibrated dance of influence and alliance. Michael adjusted his cufflink, scanning the room. Marcus is by the bar with the Takeda representatives. Stop strategizing, Elena murmured, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She wore a deep burgundy dress that complemented his tie perfectly. We're newlyweds, remember? You're supposed to be distracted by me. He glanced down at her, momentarily caught off guard by the warmth in her smile. They'd practiced this, but seeing it in action was different. She was good, very good. Michael! Barbara's voice carried across the room. There you are. Eleanor's hand tightened slightly on his arm. A warning. Showtime. Barbara approached, accompanied by an elderly Japanese gentleman. Takeda-san, please meet Michael Preston and his charming wife, Elena. Hajime mashite, Eleanor said, bowing perfectly. It's an honor to meet you. Takeda's eyes crinkled with approval. Ah, you speak Japanese. Very little, I'm afraid. But Michael insisted I learn the basics before our honeymoon in Kyoto. Michael kept his face neutral, but internally he was impressed. She'd woven their fabricated honeymoon destination into the conversation naturally, while demonstrating cultural respect. The Arashiyama bamboo forest at dawn, she continued, looking up at Michael with perfectly feigned adoration. Remember, darling. He found himself responding without thinking. You insisted on getting there before the tourists, dragged me out of bed at 4 a.m. Eleanor laughed, the sound genuine. He's still not forgiven me. Takeda nodded approvingly. My wife is the same, always pushing me to see the beauty in early mornings. The conversation flowed easily after that. Elena deftly guided topics between business and personal, never letting either dominate. When Takeda excused himself, Barbara lingered. Eleanor, you must tell me how you managed to catch our Michael. He's been decidedly anti-relationship for as long as I've known him. Actually, Michael cut in, surprising himself, she didn't catch me. She challenged me. Elena's eyes widened slightly. This wasn't in their script. First time we met, she told me my approach to cross-cultural consulting was outdated. He found himself smiling at the memory of their actual first meeting. Nobody had dared critique my method so directly before. You needed critiquing, Elena replied, falling into the rhythm. All analytics, no intuition. Barbara watched them with shrewd eyes. Well, whatever works. You make a striking couple. As she walked away, Eleanor whispered, that was good. Personal but professional, though you went off script. Improvising, like you suggested. Mr. Preston, a new voice interrupted. They turned to find Marcus Chen approaching, his smile sharp. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your bride?" Michael felt Elena's posture shift subtly, becoming more alert. They'd identified Marcus as their biggest threat. He had the most to gain if their deception was discovered. "Marcus," Elena said warmly, "I've heard so much about you. Your work on the Asian market expansion was brilliant." Marcus blinked, thrown by her knowledge of his achievements. "Thank you. Though I'm surprised Michael discusses business at home." "Why? It's where all his best ideas come from," she smiled. "Just last night he had an insight about the Takeda integration while we were making dinner." Michael caught her cue. Elena suggested approaching it through a cultural lens rather than purely financial. "Did she?" Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "Consulting background," Elena explained, "though these days I prefer giving advice over dinner rather than boardrooms. More honest feedback." She'd just explained her presence at future business dinners while reinforcing their relationship. Michael resisted the urge to show how impressed he was. "How convenient," Marcus said. "And how did you two meet?" "James Chen introduced us," Michael replied smoothly, "at the Children's Hospital benefit." "Funny, I was at that benefit." "Were you?" Eleanor's voice was innocent. "It was so crowded, though I mostly remember the rain afterward." "And this one?" She squeezed Michael's arm, insisting on finding me a taxi. "Always the gentleman," Marcus said dryly. "Hardly," Elena laughed. "He was trying to get rid of me. I'd spent half an hour arguing about his company's approach to international markets." Michael found himself chuckling, remembering their actual first meeting. "You were rather persistent." "You were rather wrong." Their genuine amusement seemed to unsettle Marcus more than any rehearsed story could have. He excused himself shortly after, leaving them in a quiet corner of the ballroom. "He's suspicious," Elena murmured. "But not certain," Michael replied. "You were—" "Yes, impressive," he admitted. Elena smiled, and for a moment he couldn't tell if it was real or part of their performance. "Evening's not over yet," she said. "Shall we mingle, darling?" He offered his arm, acutely aware of how natural it felt when she took it. "Lead the way, dear." They moved back into the crowd, their practiced intimacy masking the growing uncertainty beneath. Both recognized they'd crossed some line tonight, improvising truth into their fiction, but neither was ready to acknowledge what that might mean. It was nearly midnight when they entered Michael's office, Eleanor immediately slipping off her heels with a sigh of relief. The city lights sparkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but neither paid attention to the view. "The board bought it," Michael said, loosening his tie. "Even Marcus couldn't find holes in our story." "Because we didn't stick to the story." Eleanor settled onto the leather sofa, rubbing her feet. "We adapted, though you took some risks with those improvisations." "Me?" He poured 2 fingers of scotch into crystal tumblers. "You're the one who invented a whole conversation about the Takeda integration over a fictional dinner, which you backed up perfectly." She accepted the offered glass. "We make a good team." The words hung in the air between them. Michael sat in his chair, maintaining a professional distance. "The Kyoto detail was clever," he said finally. "I researched your travel history. You've never been to Japan, but your passport shows regular business trips to Asia. Made sense you'd choose it for a honeymoon." He studied her over his glass. "How much else have you researched about me?" "Enough to be convincing." She met his gaze. "Not enough to be intrusive." The clock ticked softly in the background as they sat in surprisingly comfortable silence. Finally, Elena pulled out her phone. "We should review tomorrow's schedule. The foundation lunch will be trickier. More people who've known you long term." "About that." Michael set down his glass. "There's been a change. My sister called. She's in town unexpectedly." Eleanor straightened. "That wasn't in the plan. She wants to meet for breakfast. Says she needs to meet the woman who finally got me to settle down. Your sister." Eleanor's mind raced. "Who you haven't spoken to in 3 years. "Well," she took a long sip of scotch. "That complicates things." Michael stood, moving to the window. "We could cancel." "No." Eleanor's voice was firm. "That would raise more questions. Tell me about her." "Sarah?" He shrugged. "What's to tell?" "Everything. If I'm meeting your sister, I need to know your history. The real history." He remained silent for so long she thought he might refuse. Then, quietly, "She blamed me when I missed our father's funeral." "When was this?" 3 years ago. I was closing the Singapore deal. Couldn't get a flight back in time." "Couldn't? Or wouldn't?" He turned sharply, but Eleanor held his gaze. "You need to decide which version you're telling me, the corporate one or the true one, because your sister will know the difference." Michael's jaw worked. Finally, he said, I could have made it, but the deal was easier than facing grief. Her voice was gentle. He didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Eleanor stood, gathering her things. Send me everything you have on Sarah. Photos, old emails, anything. And Michael. She waited until he looked at her. Tomorrow, when she asks about us, let me take the lead. Why? Because you can lie to a board about business, but you're terrible at lying about feelings. She smiled slightly. That's why you avoid them. She was at the door when he spoke again. Elena. Yes? The story you told about arguing over international markets, that really happened at our first meeting. I know. She slipped on her heels. That's why I used it. The best performances draw from truth, remember? After she left, Michael remained at the window, watching the city below. On his desk, the Scotch glasses sat side by side, one bearing a perfect impression of Elena's lipstick. He found himself staring at it, thinking about authenticity and performance, truth and lies. Tomorrow, they'd have to convince his sister, the one person who knew him before he built his walls, and for the first time he wasn't sure if he was more worried about her seeing through their deception or seeing through him. Café Laurent's morning sunlight painted everything in soft gold, but the atmosphere at their corner table crackled with tension. Sarah Preston sat across from them, her green eyes so similar to Michael's, missing nothing. So, she stirred her coffee. It was love at first argument? Elena laughed warmly, her hand resting naturally on Michael's. Hardly. I thought he was brilliant but cold. All strategy, no heart. That sounds like Michael, Sarah said dryly. Sarah, Michael warned, but Elena squeezed his hand. He proved me wrong, though. Elena's voice softened. It was the motorcycle that did it. Sarah's spoon clattered against her cup. He showed you Dad's triumph? Actually, Elena leaned forward as if sharing a secret. He was restoring it when we started dating. I'd stop by his garage on weekends just to watch him work. He's different there, more peaceful. Michael stared at his plate, unsure how Elena had known about those peaceful moments in his garage. He'd never told her. Dad taught him everything about bikes, Sarah said quietly. Used to say Michael had the perfect hands for detailed work. He does, Elena smiled, though he cursed those perfect hands plenty when he was rebuilding the transmission. Sarah's laugh was unexpected, a sound Michael hadn't heard in years. God, Dad used to swear the same way. Remember that summer he rebuilt the Norton, Michael? Remember? Michael found himself smiling. I learned half my vocabulary that summer. Most of it unprintable, Sarah added, then turned to Elena. Did he tell you about the time he tried to surprise Dad by fixing the clutch? No, Elena said, glancing at Michael with genuine curiosity. What happened? I was 15, Michael said defensively. How was I supposed to know you couldn't use standard tools on a vintage British bike? He stripped every bolt, Sarah grinned. Dad came home to find his precious motorcycle in pieces, and Michael practically in tears. I wasn't crying. Pretty close. Sarah's smile faded slightly. Dad just sat down next to him and said, Well, son, looks like we're doing this together. Silence fell over the table. Eleanor watched the siblings, sensing the weight of unspoken words. He would have understood, Michael, Sarah said finally. About Singapore. Michael's hand tightened around his coffee cup. I should have been there. Yes, Sarah agreed. But Dad, he was proud of you, even when he didn't understand your choices. Eleanor started to withdraw her hand, feeling like an intruder, but Michael held on. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know. Sarah studied them both. You seem different now, more like before. Eleanor reminds me, Michael said softly. Her about what matters. The truth in his voice surprised them both. Sarah nodded, reaching for her purse. Have dinner with us next week? Tom and the kids would love to meet their new aunt. After she left, Michael and Elena sat in silence. Finally, he said, How did you know about the garage? I didn't. Elena met his eyes. But everyone has a place where they find peace. I just guessed. The rest, basic psychology. You're successful, disciplined, detail-oriented. Had to learn it somewhere. She smiled slightly. The motorcycle was a good guess, something that requires both precision and patience. Michael studied their still-joined hands. You're dangerous. You know that? Because I can read people? Because you make lies feel like truth. Elena withdrew her hand slowly. Maybe they're not all lies. She stood gathering her things. Board meeting at 11. Should we arrive together or separately? Michael watched her, seeing both the consultant he'd hired and something else, something real that had slipped between their careful performances. Together, he said. We're supposed to be newlyweds, remember? Right, Elena nodded, just playing our parts. But as they walked to the car, both knew something had shifted. The ghost of Michael's father, the sound of Sarah's laugh, the warmth of shared understanding, none of that had been in the contract, and neither of them knew quite what to do about it. Marcus Chen stood in Michael's office doorway, his smile reminiscent of a shark scenting blood. Interesting breakfast meeting today. Michael kept his focus on his laptop. Spying on me now, Marcus? Purely coincidence. I often enjoy Café Laurent's croissants. Marcus stepped inside, closing the door. Your sister seemed emotional. Family often is. Funny, though. Marcus settled uninvited into a chair. In 5 years on the board, I've never heard you mention her. Now suddenly she's having tearful reunions with you and your new bride. Michael looked up finally. Is there a point to this, Marcus? Elena's impressive. Almost too perfect, really. Speaks Japanese, understands corporate culture, knows exactly how to handle your sister. Marcus leaned forward. Makes one wonder where you found her. You were at the benefit where we met, remember? Yes, about that. Marcus pulled out his phone. I had my assistant check the guest list from that night. Every name, every +1. Michael's finger hovered over his intercom. One press and Elena would be here, ready with another perfectly crafted story. But before he could act, his office door opened again. Sorry I'm late, darling. Elena breezed in, stopping short at the sight of Marcus. Oh, I didn't realize you were in a meeting. Just having a friendly chat, Marcus said, about the children's hospital benefit. God, that feels like ages ago. Elena perched on Michael's desk, her casual intimacy perfectly calculated. Though I suppose life-changing nights often do. Funny, I can't seem to recall seeing you there. Really? Elena's laugh was light. I wouldn't expect you to. I was James Chen's last-minute replacement when his wife got sick. Jennifer, right? Marcus's smile faltered slightly. Yes. How is she? The stomach flu that night looked dreadful. I sent soup from that little place on 8th, but never heard if it helped. Michael watched in quiet amazement as Elena spun truth and fiction together so deftly, even he almost believed it. I don't recall Jennifer mentioning soup. No? Must have been a hectic time. Anyway, Elena turned to Michael. The Takeda team is waiting in the conference room. Ready to dazzle them with those projection models? Michael stood, gathering his papers. Marcus, if we're done here. Marcus rose slowly. For now, though I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss at tomorrow's board meeting. After he left, Elena's perfect posture relaxed slightly. He's digging. You handled it well. The Jennifer detail was inspired. Simple research. She really did have stomach flu that week. Posted about it on Instagram. Elena straightened Michael's tie absently. But he's not going to stop. No, Michael agreed, acutely aware of her fingers at his collar. He isn't. Then we need to be better. She stepped back, professional again. More public appearances. Social media posts. Build a history they can't pick apart. Dinner tonight? That new place on Madison gets good press coverage. Perfect. I'll wear the blue dress. It photographs well. She headed for the door, then paused. Michael? Yes? The way you looked at Marcus just now. Keep that protective instinct when we're in public. It sells the story better than any fancy dinner could. She was gone before he could respond, leaving him to wonder when exactly he'd stopped acting protective and started feeling it. The Takeda team was waiting, but for the first time in his career, Michael Preston's mind wasn't completely on business. Instead, he found himself thinking about blue dresses and casual touches, and how the most dangerous lies were the ones that contained too much truth. The call came at 6 a.m. Saturday, shattering the quiet of Michael's penthouse. His phone buzzed across the nightstand, displaying Mom on the screen. Hello? Michael, thank God. Your father's triumph. I'm finally clearing out the garage, and the buyers are coming today. Sarah said you'd want to know. He sat up, suddenly alert. Buyers? What buyers? Well, dear, since the funeral, it's just been sitting there. Sarah thought, don't sell it. The words came out sharper than intended. Mom, please, just wait. I'll be there in an hour. His finger hovered over Elena's contact. It was Saturday, technically their day off from the charade, but his mother had undoubtedly told Sarah he was coming, and Sarah would expect. Elena answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. Someone better be dead. My mother's selling Dad's motorcycle. A pause. Give me 20 minutes. 40 minutes later, they pulled up to his childhood home in Greenwich, Connecticut. Eleanor had somehow managed to look effortlessly put together in jeans and a casual sweater, while Michael felt like his skin was on fire. Remember, she murmured as they approached the door, I've been here before. We restored the bike together, remember? But before he could respond, the door flew open. Michael and Elena, dear, what a wonderful surprise. His mother enveloped them both in hugs that smelled of coffee and familiar perfume. Michael couldn't remember the last time he'd let her hug him. Sarah said you'd gotten married, but to not even tell your own mother. She ushered them inside. Mom, the bike. In the garage, where it's always been. She patted his cheek. Go. Elena and I will make coffee. Michael hesitated, looking at Elena. Go, she smiled. Your mum and I have plenty to talk about. The garage was exactly as he remembered, tools lined up with military precision, the lingering scent of oil and metal. The Triumph sat in the center, dusty but intact, his father's pride and joy. He was running his hands over the familiar curves when Eleanor appeared with 2 coffee mugs. Your mother's lovely, she said, handing him one. Showed me all your childhood photos. You were a surprisingly serious kid. Eleanor, the one of you and your dad working on this bike? That's my favorite. You couldn't have been more than 12, but the concentration on your face... She stepped closer, examining the motorcycle. This is really something special. It was his dream bike. Took him years to find one in restorable condition. Michael's throat felt tight. We worked on it every weekend. Tell me about it? So he did. About the endless hours searching for authentic parts, the victories and frustrations, the lessons learned. Elena listened, asking occasional questions that showed she actually understood mechanics. You should keep it here, she said finally. What? The bike. Keep it here in your father's garage. Give yourself a reason to come back. He stared at her. That's not part of our arrangement. No, she agreed softly. It's just good advice. The sound of car doors closing interrupted them. Through the garage windows, they could see an older couple approaching the house. The buyers, Michael said grimly. Eleanor squared her shoulders. Well then, husband, shall we go explain that this particular item isn't for sale? She took his hand, and for once neither of them was sure if it was for show or support. They emerged from the garage to find his mother leading the couple up the driveway. I'm so sorry, Elena stepped forward smoothly, but there's been a misunderstanding. The Triumph isn't available. Michael's been restoring it. A father-son project, you understand. The disappointment was clear, but Elena's gentle firmness left no room for argument. As the couple drove away, Michael's mother touched his arm. You're really going to finish it? Yes, he said, surprising himself. Dad would have wanted that. Well then, she smiled tearfully, you better start coming by more often. That garage has been too quiet. Later, driving back to the city, Elena was uncharacteristically silent. Thank you, Michael said finally, for coming today. You didn't have to. I know. She watched the landscape blur past. Some performances matter more than others, but they both knew that nothing about this morning had been a performance, and somehow that was the most unsettling part of all. 3 days before the Takeda merger signing, Michael found Elena in his office, surrounded by scattered papers and empty coffee cups. She'd been there all night, analyzing cultural integration patterns for the merger presentation. You're breaking protocol, he said from the doorway. The cleaning staff saw you here at midnight. Couldn't sleep. She rubbed her eyes, smudging her mascara slightly. The integration timeline needed work. That's not your job. No? She held up a document. Your original plan had Japanese executives reporting directly to American division heads. It would have been a disaster. Michael moved closer, scanning the revisions. Her amendments were perfect. She'd restructured the hierarchy to preserve face while maintaining efficiency. How long did this take you? A few hours. I called some contacts in Tokyo to verify cultural nuances. She stretched, her silk blouse wrinkled from the long night. The board meeting's in 2 hours. We should rehearse our entrance. Eleanor, I'm thinking we arrive separately today. Shows independence while still... Stop. He sat on the edge of his desk. Why are you doing this? It's my job. Your job was to pose as my wife, not rebuild our entire merger strategy. Elena stood gathering papers with sharp movements. The roles overlapped. I saw a problem, I fixed it. At midnight, alone in my office. Would you prefer I did it at home? Oh wait, we don't actually live together, do we? Her voice held an edge he'd never heard before. This is just business, remember? Michael caught her arm as she tried to pass him. Is it? The question hung between them, dangerous and electric. Elena looked at where his hand gripped her sleeve, then up at his face. Let go, Michael. He did, immediately. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... No, you shouldn't have. She stepped back, creating professional distance. We had rules. Rules, He laughed humorlessly. Like not working past midnight, not connecting with my family, not fixing problems you weren't hired to fix. I was hired to make you look good. Her chin lifted. Everything I've done supports that goal, including with Sarah, my mother, especially them. She turned away, organizing papers she'd already organized. Your family connections make you appear more stable. The board— Stop talking about the board. Michael moved around the desk, forcing her to face him. Why did you really come to Connecticut yesterday? Because you called. It was Saturday. Our deal was weekdays only. Fine. She met his eyes. I came because you needed me. Happy. The truth hung raw between them. Michael stepped closer. Eleanor— A knock at the door made them both jump. Marcus Chen stood in the doorway, eyebrows raised. Well, he said smoothly. Isn't this cozy? Eleanor recovered first. Marcus, I was just reviewing the integration strategy with my husband. At 7 a.m., wearing yesterday's clothes. Michael felt Eleanor tense beside him. Before she could respond, he pulled her close, letting his hand settle possessively on her hip. My wife's dedication is one of the things I love about her. Something you'd understand if you weren't divorced. 3 times, is it? Marcus's smile turned brittle. The board meeting starts in 2 hours. I hope your strategy is ready. After he left, Eleanor remained still in Michael's arms for a moment longer than necessary. Then she stepped away, straightening her blouse. That was risky, but effective. We need to be more careful. She wouldn't meet his eyes. No more late nights. No more moments like this. Eleanor, I'll see you in the boardroom. She gathered her things quickly. Try to look less rumpled. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Michael stared at the integration plans she'd spent all night perfecting, plans that would save his merger, his company, his reputation, and all he could think about was the way she'd felt in his arms, and how nothing in their carefully constructed performance had prepared him for the reality of wanting it to be true. The Takeda merger signing was set for 10 a.m. By 9:45, the boardroom was filled with executives, lawyers, and the quiet tension of billions of dollars at stake. Michael stood at the window, watching Elena chat effortlessly with the Japanese delegation. 6 days. It had taken only 6 days for their carefully constructed facade to become something neither of them could control. Marcus Chen entered last, carrying a thick folder. The smile on his face made Michael's stomach turn. Before we begin, Marcus announced, there's a matter of corporate integrity we need to discuss. He opened the folder, specifically about the relationship between our CEO and his wife. Elena's hand stilled on her water glass. Across the room, Barbara Chen straightened in her chair. I have here, Marcus continued, proof that Elena Suarez was hired as a consultant exactly 7 days ago. Their marriage license doesn't exist. Their relationship is a fraud. The room erupted in murmurs. Takeda-san's expression darkened. Marcus, Barbara warned, but he was already distributing documents. Bank transfers, contracts, even the original negotiation recordings. He turned to Takeda-san and bowed. I apologize for this deception. As a board member, I felt obligated. Stop! Michael's voice cut through the chaos. He looked at Elena, saw the slight nod she gave him. You're right. The room fell silent. Eleanor and I aren't married. We never were. Michael moved to the head of the table. The board requested I present a more stable image for these negotiations. I made a choice, a wrong one, to manufacture that image. Through fraud, Marcus said triumphantly. Through desperation, Michael corrected. But Elena— He paused, looking at her. Elena wasn't just playing a role. She rebuilt our entire integration strategy, called Tokyo at midnight to verify cultural protocols, connected with my family in ways I'd forgotten how to do. Michael, Elena said softly, a warning in her voice. No, they need to hear this. He turned to Takeda-san. You valued family stability because it shows commitment, understanding, the ability to build lasting relationships. I thought I could fake that. But Elena showed me what it actually looks like. Takeda-san studied them both carefully. The integration plan. Ms. Suarez created this. Yes, Michael said, because she saw problems I missed. Because she cares about doing things right, not just looking right. And now? Takeda-san asked. What is truth here between you? Michael met Elena's eyes across the room. In them, he saw the same question he'd been avoiding for days. Before he could respond, she stood. The truth is I was hired to play a role, but somewhere between the contract and now She took a breath. I broke protocol. I got involved. I started caring about the merger, The company, the family. She looked at Michael. Everything. The silence stretched. Finally, Takeda-san spoke. In Japan we have word. Koi no yokan means not love at first sight, but knowledge that love is possible. That future exists. He smiled slightly. Sometimes, best partnerships start from unexpected places. Barbara leaned forward. Marcus, sit down. Michael, while we'll need to discuss this deception, right now, we have a merger to complete. Unless Takeda-san objects. Takeda-san shook his head. I came to merge companies. Instead, I see merger of minds, of hearts. Much better foundation, I think. As the lawyers began distributing documents, Elena slipped out of the room. Michael found her in his office, gathering her things. Elena, wait. Don't. She kept packing. We completed the contract, you got your merger. It's done. Is it? He moved closer. Because I think we broke more than just protocol. She stilled. Michael, stay. Not as my fake wife. Not as a consultant. Stay because somewhere between the lies and the truth Don't say it. But she turned to face him. Not unless you mean it. He reached for her hand, and for the first time there was no audience to perform for. No roles to play. Just truth. Complicated and terrifying and real. I mean it. Eleanor's office was packed into 3 neat boxes, her consulting firm's logo emblazoned on each side. She stood in Michael's doorway, their last scheduled meeting according to the contract. The final report, she said, placing a thick binder on his desk. Complete merger integration strategy, cultural alignment protocols, and family engagement recommendations. Michael didn't touch the binder. That's not why I asked you here. I know. She remained standing. But we need to handle this professionally, like everything else. Michael, you've been avoiding me for 3 days. She smiled slightly. I've been working. The merger is done. Signed. Successful. He stood, moving around the desk. Stop hiding behind work. I'm not hiding. I'm being practical. She squared her shoulders. What happened in the boardroom, the things we said, were true, were complicated. She finally met his eyes. You're still my client. Not anymore. He held up a document. As of midnight, our contract expired. And that makes everything simple? No. He moved closer. But it makes it possible. Eleanor's breath caught. Possible for what? Dinner. No cameras, no board members, just us. And then we figure it out. He smiled slightly. Without a script this time. She looked at the boxes containing her old life, then back at him. The board approved your consulting firm for permanent cultural integration oversight, if you want it. And if I want something else? Michael reached for her hand, the gesture familiar now, but charged with new meaning. Then we negotiate new terms. Elena's fingers intertwined with his. No performance required. I don't date clients. Good thing I'm not your client anymore. Or men who hire fake wives. Never doing that again. His thumb traced her wrist. Though I have to admit, the last one set an impossible standard. Eleanor stepped closer, professional distance finally forgotten. You know this is crazy, right? Completely. He smiled. But then, all the best partnerships start from unexpected places. Are you quoting Takeda-san? I'm learning. His free hand cupped her cheek. Stay. This time, when Elena smiled, there was nothing calculated about it. Yes. Outside his office, the city hummed with business as usual. But inside, 2 people who had started with a contract were discovering that sometimes the most genuine things grow from artificial beginnings. And maybe, just maybe, that made them more real than anything they could have planned. 6 months later, Michael stood in his father's garage, hands covered in grease. The Triumph's engine parts spread across a weathered workbench. You're doing it wrong, Elena called from the doorway, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. I thought you were helping Mom with lunch. She kicked me out, said I was hovering. She set the mugs down, examining his work. The gasket needs to be aligned differently. Since when are you an expert on vintage motorcycles? Since I spent 3 months watching YouTube tutorials to understand what you were talking about. She picked up a wrench, her engagement ring catching the light. Move over. Michael watched as she expertly adjusted the gasket. The diamond on her finger was new, 2 weeks new, but somehow felt like it had always been meant to be there. Sarah called, Eleanor said casually. Wanted to know if we're still on for Sunday dinner. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, not caring about the grease stains. Remember when we had to rehearse every family interaction? Remember when you couldn't look at me without checking your script? He turned her to face him. I was an idiot. You were careful, she corrected, until you weren't. The sound of car tires on gravel interrupted them. Through the garage windows, they saw Marcus Chen's BMW pulling up. Right on time, Eleanor smiled. Michael raised an eyebrow. You invited him? He's still on the board, Michael, and he's been different since the wedding announcement. Indeed, Marcus had been the first to congratulate them when they'd made it official. Maybe because a real relationship was the one thing he hadn't suspected. Ready to face the dragon? Michael asked. Eleanor wiped her hands on a rag, leaving her engagement ring sparkling against the grime. Please, after fake marrying you? Everything else is easy. As they walked out to greet Marcus, Michael caught her hand. No performance, no protocol, no pretense. Just them, building something real from the strangest of beginnings. Sometimes, he realized, the best contracts are the ones you break. And sometimes, the truest things start with a lie. The Preston Consulting annual gala glittered with success. The Takeda merger had doubled their market share, and champagne flowed freely among executives celebrating their best year yet. Michael found Elena on the balcony away from the crowd. She wore blue, the same shade as that first week of pretense, but everything else had changed. Hiding from your admirers? He asked, joining her at the railing. Just remembering, she smiled. 1 year ago we were performing for these people. Every gesture calculated, every word rehearsed. We were terrible actors. We were excellent actors. She turned to face him. That was the problem. Below them, Marcus Chen was addressing the crowd, praising the cultural integration that had made the merger so successful. No mention of the deception that started it all. Some stories, they'd learned, were better left in the boardroom. Dance with me, Michael said suddenly. Here? Why not? No audience, no expectations. He held out his hand. Just us. Eleanor took it, letting him pull her close. They swayed to the faint music drifting up from the ballroom, her head resting naturally on his shoulder. The board wants to expand to Europe, she murmured. Going to make me hire another wife? She pinched his arm. Not funny. No? He spun her slowly. I thought I did pretty well with the last one. You got lucky. I got caught, he corrected. Best thing that ever happened to me. Eleanor lifted her head, studying him in the soft light. No more contracts? Just one. He touched his wedding ring. And this time I read all the fine print. The music changed below, but they kept dancing to their own rhythm. No performance needed, no roles to play. Just two people who had found truth in the midst of deception and love